Hey everyone, Brownflix here, back with another Eternal Return video. Today's topic is going to be about macro overall with the game. This video has been pretty requested, and I know that I said I want to make a higher quality video for it, but I'm realizing now that with the start of the ranked season, everyone who's starting to try out ranked for the first time probably wants to at least have a vague idea what they should be doing, so apologies for not doing this sooner, especially in the preseason so we could get practice, but it's here now. I'll cover these three topics in more detail later on, but I just want to get a quick video and summary out right now so that you guys are all aware of what the common trends are and what common lines are when it comes to progressing your gameplay in Eternal Return. So we'll start off with the early game, obviously. The early game is super important because it really dictates your pace of the game and how you are going to really feel going throughout the entire game. It sets your game pace, it determines how well the rest of the game's going to go, and really if your early game is planned out poorly, then you'll really feel the effect going into your mid game and late game, just because you'll fall further and further behind outside of minor miracles where maybe you get a few lucky pickoffs here and there. So what is the early game? The early game is obviously when you are crafting your route, but it also includes the few minutes after you finish your build, and even like the last kind of chunk of that build. So why is this important? When you start your early game and you're building your build, there are certain points in your build where you are actually allowed to grief people super early and realistically kill them. So you see an example in this game where I have most of my build completed besides my chest piece, but I know that Kathy does a lot of damage without her chest piece early on, so I decided to take on a few fights because I know that my character benefits and is able to actually do that. Obviously, I could go into Cemetery and finish my chest piece, but I decided that killing the wolves and kind of risking it here is a lot better because of the respawn timers and because I know how strong Kathy's early game is. A lot of characters with strong builds will have a similar spike, where if there's a person who is crafting and slightly behind on their build, you can often get a free kill. And obviously, kills in this early game matter, or in this squads focus game matter a little bit less because people do respawn very quickly, but you should still be aware that it is free ranked points and it is free mastery that you're getting for very little investment because you also benefit from that respawning aspect. So you see here that I kind of mess up this haze kill, but it doesn't matter because I still have most control over this zone. I think the wolves, the second set, are taken, but I still get one set of wolves, I get a kill, and I'm not really in danger because, again, I'm playing Kathy, and if I die, I respawn anyways, and I only really need a fabric armor, or fabric armor and chain, I believe, so not really losing much here. So how should you apply this generally to your games? You should see if your build has a good spike where you have your weapon and a few other damage items early, and if you know how much damage your character does, like you fought a few times and you know that you can one-shot somebody, you should try and focusing people that don't respect your character's presence during that moment. So let's say that you have your purple weapon, you have your main damage like arm piece and head piece like I do, then you should really try jumping somebody just to push them out of the zone or see if they disrespect you and you're able to one-shot them, just because if you push someone out of your zone, not only does that delay their build, if you manage to kill them, you delay them even further, and you might kill them again later on, which gives your team even more ranked points going to the future. So after that, you're going to decide whether or not you want to group with your team, or if you want to try and play a bit riskier and go solo for bears at night 1. So the reason why this is kind of an actual decision to make is because bears give you a lot of valuable credits, and credits are shared globally. So let's say that you're solo and you're running around in that little beach uptown warehouse area. If you kill all 8 bears by yourself, that's a lot of free credits that your team gets, and you're also denying a lot of credits for people that might be there. So let's say you start beach, you kill 3 bears there, and another team starts uptown and warehouse and they kill those bears there. You might not be able to get to those last 4 bears in those zones, but you've already denied 3 other bears for them, so you've delayed them because they chose to group, and you're also getting a very big credit spike for your team. Obviously, this depends on the character because a lot of characters can't farm that quickly, and also there's a risk of you running into a squad and dying for free, but that's just a choice you have to make, whether or not you want to risk that early game and see if you can get that greed off. So when does the mid game start? In my opinion, the mid game starts 30 seconds or a minute before day 2 spawns, because day 2 is when the trees and meteors spawn for the first time. So what do the trees and meteors give, or what's the relevance of them? Obviously, if you played the game before, you know how valuable shiny golden items are, and trees or meteors are the earliest time where you can make those items. And they do provide some pretty good upgrades for a lot of characters, so you really want to get them as soon as possible. Obviously, around this time, you probably have enough credits, especially with Penny Pincher, to afford them by yourself, but saving those 185 or 200 credits is obviously very, very valuable if you're trying to get good tempo. So you always want to at least try and see if it's available for free, and you want to be with your team, because if you die at this point, you're losing a lot of time and you're losing a lot of tempo for your teammates to not only farm, but also get that tree for themselves if you're not up for that time duration. So make sure that you're at least having that idea on your mind, whether it's the meteorites, anything hotel, uptown, and somewhere else, versus the trees that are going to be in temple and cemetery. You at least want to contest one of these, unless you're comfortable with your team scaling very quickly without those. But even if your team scales quickly, you still want to contest them because that's how important they are. Going into night 2, you're going to have a decision between battle zones and alpha. Personally, I would suggest battle zones because, again, more kills is more mastery, more ranked points, and the potential for alpha or the alpha reward, which is mithril anyways. But alpha is obviously very safe because, or a little safer I guess, because you always have the option to back out and you won't be losing as much if you just back out there. But yeah, my recommendation is battle zone and then run to alpha afterwards. I think alpha is a little less contested, so you can flip that, but obviously if your team dies contesting alpha, your game is over, unlike in battle zones where you get to respawn. So it's really up to you which one you choose. I still don't know what the best choice is myself, but I'm just choosing battle zones because it's more action usually, and it's a lot safer because you get a free guaranteed zone to yourself. So the real ending of mid-game is going to be day 3 because your team no longer respawns, and every death you have is essentially a mithril purchase for your teammate, which will set your team very far behind. So every fight here matters a lot because you're either fighting for, you know, an objective, or you're fighting to not lose your teammates a free mithril, which is essentially an alpha kill. So obviously you still have to play aggressive, you're still gonna have to take fights, but just be aware of how expensive it is to lose a teammate at this point in the game. They have to farm, they can't take fights, they can't take objectives, they can't make their items safely, they're running for their lives, and you're gonna deny them an alpha and like 2/3 of a force core because of your death. So be very careful. This is the reason why at day 3 you really should be grouped permanently. The things that spawn at day 3 are also not very valuable in my opinion comparatively to what spawned around them. So I think at the start of day 3 is also when you would best want to get the kiosk, just because you want to be prepped and ready for a mega spawn, which is at night 3. So a mega spawn drops a force core, very expensive, 335 or 350 credits depending on if you have penny pincher, and these are some of the best items in the game. So you want to make sure that your team is ready for this because it is an extremely important upgrade to get, assuming that you're behind. If you're already very far ahead, then this Omega contest is actually kind of optional because a lot of times you might have afforded a force score anyways from all the fights you've had and all the credits you've stolen from other teams, but you should still be aware that this is a very big upgrade. Some of the best items, Persona, Holy Orders, Dragon Scale, a lot of auto attacker weapons, so many things are such big bumps from force score that you really just want to be available for that moment because, you know, it's just that big. And if you win a fight at night 3, then that's almost at the time where it's again very expensive to respawn, and if you manage to take out somebody on the winning team, then they have to spend even more credits. Maybe they deny themselves a VF blood because now they have to revive as opposed to spending it. Day 3, night 3 is a very important segment of the game because that is when deaths become a lot more prevalent because of how respawns work and because of how reviving works. At this point, you're just really, it's a matter of how well built your team is. If you're very far behind, then you're probably looking for lucky third parties or playing very well to get items and credits off of other people. If you're very far ahead, then you're gonna be trying pushing that advantage and probably taking your time with third parties just because, or taking your time with fights just because third parties can ruin your game instantly. It really just comes down to how you've handled your early and mid game because, you know, Wickeline's always party fiesta, you know, it's always very messy on who actually gets it unless you get it immediately on spawn and no one's there, which obviously again is a very good power spike and a very big boon for people who are there. But you should still be very aware that even Wickeline herself is a very important objective take because a lot of teams will die at Wickeline, whether it's your team or the team contesting you. Objectives in this game are very odd because a lot of the time there could be no one fighting, but a lot of times there could be people fighting, like maybe the entire lobby shows up, maybe nobody shows up. It's always a risk, and a lot of the game is learning how to handle that risk, but you have to understand that especially in squads and especially with how they've remade items, you have to get gold items to win late game. Unless the other team kind of like turns off the monitor and drops spaghetti everywhere, assuming that you are of equal skill. If you are of equal skill, there's almost no way you ever beat another team who simply has more gold, unless your comp is just that much better than theirs. But arguably, if you're at that point, your comp's probably not much better than theirs because of the fact that you guys both made it to this point and you both killed many teams to this point. So it is very, very important to understand how important objectives are. Again, I need to reiterate this because it's just how incredibly streamlined, I guess, they made this game. You need transitions, you need upgrades, you need to make sure that your tempo is good, you need to make sure that your fights are good, you need to make sure that your comp is good, because if your comp's bad, your fights can go poorly, and if your upgrades are bad, then you're never going to win the game, and if the rat, which obviously you can still climb with, but your climb's going to be much slower. So let me know which part of the game you want the more, I guess, feedback on. Obviously, I'm going to go one by one, but if there's one you guys want me to skip towards and just, do ahead of time, please let me know, and I'll go ahead and do it. I'll explain more detail, especially after I've played more games myself, just so I can give more accurate information. I'll try and release another video later today. Obviously, if you're watching this far in the future, redundant information, but I appreciate you getting this far. Hope you guys have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.